Something was just caught on camera in the Florida Everglades that was never supposed to happen. For 2 decades, this swamp told one story and one story only.
The number of Burmese pythons continues to skyrocket. Those snakes are not native to the Sunshine State and are wreaking havoc on the Everglades ecosystem.
The pythons win, the native animals vanish, the wild goes silent. Every biologist thought they knew exactly how it ended. Then a single piece of footage surfaced from deep in the swamp, and it flipped that ending on its head, an aftermath nobody in this fight ever saw coming.
They found this dead snake about 15 miles into the deep part of the Everglades, but believe that it means the ecosystem is fighting back against invasives.
What that camera recorded is so strange and so unexpected that scientists are still struggling to explain what it means, and it changes everything. The river of grass. Most people get one thing wrong before they get anything else right. The Everglades was never just a swamp. It was a slow-moving river of grass spread across South Florida, a vast subtropical wilderness that filtered your drinking water, softened storm surge, recharged aquifers, and held up one of the most complex food webs in the entire United States. Its value has been estimated in the tens of billions of dollars every single year, and not because it photographs well from a helicopter. It earned that number quietly, it absorbed, it filtered, it protected. And you have to picture how alive it used to be. Wading birds moved over the sawgrass in flocks thick enough to darken the sky. Alligators ruled the channels. Raccoons, opossums, bobcats, marsh rabbits, foxes, and white-tailed deer stacked into the layers of an ecosystem that spent thousands of years learning how to balance itself. Every predator had prey. Every prey animal had somewhere to hide. That kind of balance takes millennia to build. It took about 20 years to come apart. The silent invasion. Let me tell you how it came apart, because it did not start the way most people assume. In August of 1992, Hurricane Andrew slammed into South Florida as a Category 5 storm, throwing winds through neighborhoods at more than 165 miles per hour. Homes were flattened. And according to a story that has been repeated ever since, a reptile breeding facility near Miami was ripped open, spilling Burmese pythons into the wetlands. That story may have played a part, but between you and me, it was almost certainly not the biggest part. The real culprit is quieter, and it is us. Through the 1990s, Burmese pythons became the exotic pet everyone suddenly wanted, cheap and striking and easy to grab at a reptile show. A hatchling fits in the palm of your hand and looks harmless, but baby pythons do not stay babies. In just a few years, that little snake becomes a 10-foot, 50-pound predator that no ordinary person can feed or control. And when owners hit that wall, a lot of them made the same quiet decision. They drove out to the edge of the Everglades and let it go. They told themselves they were setting an animal free. What they were actually doing was handing a defenseless ecosystem a weapon. And for years, almost nobody noticed. Think about how perfectly this animal is built for exactly this place. Its scales dissolve against dead grass and black water. Heat-sensing pits along its jaw let it find a warm body in total darkness. It can hold itself underwater for long stretches, patient, waiting, and a raccoon padding along a bank. At night may never know the snake is there until the coils have already closed around its ribs. Then there is the sheer math of it. A single female can lay up to 100 eggs in one clutch, and with nothing out there to keep the numbers down, the population climbed fast. Estimates vary enormously, anywhere from the tens of thousands into the hundreds of thousands, and honestly, nobody can count them. That uncertainty is its own kind of horror. And then the survey data came in, and this is where I need you to really hear me. In the hardest hit areas, raccoon numbers had crashed by more than 99%, opossums almost as far, bobcats down hard, marsh rabbits and foxes simply gone from some survey zones, not thinned out, erased. Biologists who had given their whole careers to this place started describing miles of habitat where headlights used to catch movement every few seconds, now returning nothing. No rustle, no eye shine. The swamp was still breathing, but something essential had been eaten right out of the middle of it. And listen, before we go deeper, because this does go deeper, if a wild place fighting for its own survival is the kind of story you actually want to follow to the end, do me one favor and subscribe. That is the whole ask. It is how the next part reaches you. And the next part is where everything people assumed starts to fall apart. Hunting ghosts. Because Florida did fight back, and from the outside, the first response looked almost like a show. The state rolled out public python removal events, cash prizes, cameras, headlines, the whole spectacle, and it gave everyone the comforting sense that something was being done. But the arithmetic is brutal, and I want you to feel how brutal. In the 2024 event, hunters pulled out fewer than 200 snakes. Fewer than 200 out of a population that may run into the hundreds of thousands. That is trying to empty a lake with a coffee cup. The serious effort has been much bigger than any contest. Since 2017, paid contractors and researchers have removed more than 23,000 pythons from South Florida. And that number sounds staggering until you remember it may still be a sliver of what is out there. The problem was never how hard people tried. The problem is the animal. Thermal drones struggle because a cold-blooded snake barely glows against ground that is already hot. Mechanical decoys flop because an ambush predator will not chase a fake meal on command. Even the clever trick of tagging male snakes and following them to females during breeding season works, but never at the scale you would need to actually break the population. And then field teams notice something that should make the hair on your neck stand up. Traps that worked one season stopped working the next. Reliable hunting grounds went silent, not because the snakes were gone, but because they had slipped deeper into terrain people can barely reach. Maybe individual snakes were learning, or maybe the careless ones were simply being removed, while the wary ones survived and bred the next generation of wary ones. Either way, the result is the same. An animal that was already almost impossible to find is getting better at vanishing. We threw everything we had at this invasion, and the invasion adapted. Then the next twist came from a direction nobody was even watching. Not a hunter, not a drone, something microscopic, something that had been moving through this swamp, unseen, for years. The invisible weapon. Let me show you what was hiding in the water while everyone counted snakes. Its name is Rhylidiella orientalis, and most people call it the snake lungworm, a parasite native to Southeast Asia. And researchers started finding it in the last place they wanted to. Not in the pythons, but in Florida's own native snakes, animals that should have been healthy, and were instead turning up thin, sluggish, gasping for air. Picture a scientist out in the field lifting one of these snakes, feeling how wrong it is in her hands, then opening it up and finding the lungs packed with worms, dozens of them, burrowed into the tissue and feeding on blood. That is the moment the second invasion stopped being theoretical. And the way it spreads, I have to warn you, is genuinely grim. An infected snake leaves the parasite's eggs in its waste. Cockroaches and other invertebrates eat that waste and pick up the larvae. Frogs eat the cockroaches, native snakes eat the frogs. And once the larvae are inside a new snake, they do not stay put in the stomach. They tunnel through the stomach wall, migrate up into the lungs, latch on, feed, and multiply, until the animal stops eating and slowly begins to suffocate. In the worst cases, researchers have found the parasites crawling out of the mouths of snakes as they die. Now, stay with me, because this is the part that changes everything. Burmese pythons can carry this thing and shrug it off, because they had thousands of years back home to evolve a tolerance for it. Florida's native snakes had no such history and no such defense. And the lungworm has already pushed far past the Everglades into at least 18 native snake species, documented well up into northern Florida, reaching toward Jacksonville. It no longer even seems to need the pythons to keep going. It has settled into native snake populations that hand it to one another, which means even if every python in Florida vanished overnight, this parasite would stay. That one is permanent. So now you have a swamp under siege from two directions at once. From above, the pythons eating the mammals. From inside, a parasite hollowing out the reptiles that hold the middle of the food web together. And yet, buried in that grim data, researchers found one result that flat out refused to fit. The Florida cottonmouth kept coming back clean. This venomous pit viper, living right in the same infected water as everything else, has so far shown far fewer signs of the infection wrecking its neighbors. No one is yet certain why. Maybe an immune response, maybe blood chemistry, maybe something nobody has identified yet. But if a single native snake has quietly cracked the code, that resistance might be a key to saving the rest. And it is now one of the most urgent open questions in Florida wildlife biology. And while scientists were chewing on that mystery, the state announced a plan that, when you first hear it, sounds completely insane. They were going to put more snakes into the wild. The king returns. I know exactly how that sounds. The whole problem is too many snakes and the fix is more snakes. But hang on, because this one is different in the way that matters most. The snake they were releasing was not another invader. It was a native king coming home to a throne it had lost. Let me introduce you to the eastern indigo snake. It is the longest snake native to North America. A glossy blue-black animal that can stretch up to 9 feet and moves across the forest floor like it owns the deed to it. And it is a snake eater. It does not bother constricting. It pins prey with sheer jaw strength and swallows it down. And it is immune to the venom of North American pit vipers, which means rattlesnakes, cottonmouths, and copperheads are all just meals to it. For a long time, almost nothing on that forest floor could touch it. But the indigo did not disappear because something beat it. It disappeared because its home did. This snake leans hard on gopher tortoise burrows to survive Florida's heat and cold snaps. And as development chewed up the longleaf pine and sandhill habitat those tortoises need, the tortoises declined and the indigos went down right alongside them. Across much of northern Florida, the species was simply gone, last recorded in some key areas back in the early 1980s. Written off. A ghost of the panhandle. And this is where the whole story turns, so stay with me. For decades, a quiet coalition of conservation groups refused to let it stay a ghost. They bred indigos in captivity, rebuilt longleaf pine habitat, brought gopher tortoises back, and prepared a protected landscape at the Apalachicola Bluffs and Ravines Preserve so a returning snake would actually have the structure it needed. Year after year, they released captive-raised animals and hoped. Then, in late 2023, field surveys and trail cameras confirmed the exact thing these teams had been waiting more than 40 years to see. 2 wild-born eastern indigo hatchlings moving through the underbrush, not released. Born out there, on their own. The first proof in over 4 decades that the king was breeding again in North Florida, rebuilding its own kingdom without us carrying it. And while that quiet miracle was unfolding up north, something just as unexpected was starting far to the south. The animals that had spent 20 years as nothing but prey were beginning to fight back. The home team. And this is the footage everything has been building toward. It centers on a radio-tagged male python named Loki, a snake that a biologist named Ian Bartoshik and his team had been following through the Big Cypress region for years, using him as a scout to lead them to breeding females. When they tracked his signal to its source, they did not find a live snake doing its job. They found a 52-pound carcass with the head and neck torn away. So they did what you would do. They set a trail camera on the body and waited to see what would come back. And what strolled into frame was a bobcat, an adult cat weighing maybe 25 pounds, roughly half the size of the snake. And the evidence pointed to that same cat as the killer. It was the first documented case in Florida of a bobcat killing and caching a Burmese python. Bartoshek had tracked scouts like Loki for years, long enough to feel the loss of one. And even so, his reaction landed somewhere close to joy. A 25-pound cat had brought down and stored a 52-pound python. To him, that was a win for the home team, a native animal punching way above its weight against an invasive giant. And once you know to look, it stops being a fluke. Across South Florida, reports had been piling up of native predators handling pythons in ways nobody expected. Alligators taking smaller ones, panthers and bears turning up as suspected python killers, native animals figuring out exactly when a python is vulnerable, in the slow, heavy hours after a big meal, mid-water crossing, in the brief windows when even a perfect ambush predator is not ready for a fight. Now, do not misread me. This does not mean the pythons are losing. By raw numbers, they are still winning, and one bold bobcat cannot undo 20 years of collapse. But the direction of the story has changed. It is no longer a slaughter running one way. For the first time, it looks like a fight. And fights turn on moments nobody saw coming. The collision ahead. Which is exactly why that footage matters so much, because this swamp is now sliding toward a collision no camera has ever captured. The eastern indigo is spreading back out from its strongholds in the north. At the same time, the Burmese pythons have been pushing northward, following waterways, warming temperatures, and connected habitat corridors. Their ranges are drifting toward each other, and no one knows the day they meet, but they will meet. Sit with what that means. An eastern indigo, fast, aggressive, immune to venom, an animal literally evolved to hunt other snakes, against a Burmese python that could outweigh it many times over. The indigo's edge is not size. It is speed, jaw pressure, and a flat refusal to let go. It has been killing rattlesnakes and cottonmouths since long before we were watching. But it has never met anything like a full-grown Burmese python, and no camera has ever recorded how that goes. And there is a darker thread running underneath all of it. The lungworm is moving north too. If the eastern indigo expands into infected territory before anyone knows whether it has any resistance, then the very animal we are counting on to help restore balance could walk straight into a biological trap. Decades of painstaking restoration could slam headfirst into a parasite nobody yet knows how to stop. So that is the real aftermath those cameras revealed. Not a clean victory, not a final collapse. Something stranger and far less certain. A wounded ecosystem out there right now, searching for a new balance between an invasive giant, a microscopic parasite, a native king clawing back from extinction, and local animals finally learning how to hit back. The bobcats are adapting, the indigo is breeding, the cottonmouth may be holding a clue, and the swamp, after 20 years of silence, is moving again. But nobody knows who wins. Does the indigo arrive in time? Can it stand against the python on open ground? Does the lungworm reach it first? Does the cottonmouth's resistance unlock an answer that saves the rest? Do the bobcats and panthers and gators learn fast enough to matter? Nobody has those answers yet. And that is exactly what makes this footage so extraordinary. For the first time in 20 years of slow collapse, the ending is genuinely unwritten. The Everglades is still wounded, the invasion is still real, the parasite is still spreading, but the wild has started moving again. And the next chapter may be the most violent and unpredictable one yet. So, here is the question worth sitting with. When the swamp finally fights back at full strength, who survives it? The invader, the parasite, the returning king, or the home team? Drop your prediction in the comments and subscribe now, because the Everglades has much more to show us, and this story is only getting started.